One's ready. Go!
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is your daily drop for 5 March, brought to you by DFND, DFNDUSA.com. Use the promo code ONESREADY to get yourself a discount for any of their IR sleepwear, their compression stuff, compression socks, shirts, pants. They have shorts with compression, liners in them, and then they have shorts without it. Firefighting stuff, like great equipment. We had the CEO, Steve Burnett, on, so check out that episode, please. Like I said, DFNDUSA.com, promo code ONESREADY. All right, on to the news. If you're new to the channel or new to this is the latest news that the Air Force commanders and chiefs receive every single day. It is on the unclassified level, not sensitive or anything like that, so you're not getting special treatment other than the fact that you get to have me read it to you. And then some of these I'll give opinions on, some of them I won't. All right, here we go. In the joint news, number one, Air Force Space Force chiefs make forceful case for, quote, warrior ethos. Defense One, released on 4 March. Air Force Chief of Staff David Alvin and Chief of Space Operations General Chance Saltzman emphasized the need for a warrior ethos within their respective services during the keynote addresses on Monday. Alvin said the Air Force's efforts to refocus its mission for near-peer competition are fully aligned with the Trump administration's goals, adding that the Air Force is, quote, changing the way we are bringing airmen into the formation to make sure they align and developed with the warrior ethos in mind, end quote. Saltzman spoke openly about offensive counter space capabilities during his keynote address and focused on space superiority, adding, quote, "It is now our job to contest and control the space domain, to fight and win so that we assure freedom of access for our forces while denying the same to our adversaries," end quote. Yeah, completely agree. It's like, for the Air Force and Space Force for that matter, it is very difficult for them to convey a sense of warrior ethos within the Air Force, especially, and I think the tide is changing with that a little bit now, just in the way that, hey, everybody come back to work, because whether you believe it or not, there were people, civilians and active duty military, that were still teleworking as of 2025. No shit. And I'm talking about, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they'd be in the office, but Tuesday and Thursday, they were allowed to telework all day. And these are customer service type positions, right? So, needless to say, there wasn't really a warrior ethos that was really getting put down or, being propagated across the force. And really, your Air Force Special Warfare, maybe some of your Security Forces Daggers, your Ravens, are really the only ones. I don't want to say the only ones, because your fighters as well, obviously, and then your tanker community, your global strike community. Like, there are pockets within the Air Force that have this kind of fangs out warrior ethos, but the majority of the Air Force does not have that. So trying to instill that in them is a definite cultural shift, and one that I am all about. So, yeah. Number two, at least one Pentagon agency has begun firing probationary workers, Defense One, released on 4 March. The Defense Logistics Agency has begun dismissing probationary civilian employees as part of a Defense Department workforce reduction initiative. Prior to the dismissals, DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, staff reviewed affected personnel to ensure mission continuity, leaders said in an all-hands message. In an email, leaders said, quote, "We recognize and appreciate the contributions of those impacted and provide them with resources to assist in their transition from federal service," end quote. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said last month that the DoD was reviewing its probationary workforce. I'm here to tell you right now, there are going to be people's lives that are impacted by this. I'm saying this from somebody who agrees with what's going on, right? So, but that doesn't mean that I don't empathize or I don't have concerns with what is going to happen with our probationary force and our, permanent force, if you want to call it that, in terms of the civilian, right? Because there are some probationary folks that are incredibly qualified, do incredible work, and are in positions now that are critical, mission critical to ensuring that training, operations, uh, end up happening and happening safely. So, like, I'm cautious of that, or not cautious. I'm cognizant of that, and like I just, as we're going through all this, I know it's a big dust up, and believe me, I hear from government civilians every single day about this stuff, and there are real concerns. Some of them that are permanent, some of them that are probationary. So, like, these are real things, real people's lives. They aren't just numbers that we're dealing with. So we just, instead of a clean cut, I think we need to get more particular. Now, with that said, that also makes commanders and civilians that are in supervisory positions, that also levies the kind of burden on them, if you will, to actually have these conversations. And they're not easy conversations when you say, hey, your position, we don't actually need it, so we're going to have to let you go. Like, that is not an easy thing to look somebody in the eye and do, which is why so many people just do it by phone call and email, which I don't necessarily agree with. I mean, you do it if that's your last resort, but whatever. So, yeah, a lot of people's lives impacted by this. But, I just read this morning, this is not part of this, but the IRS is cutting like 40,000 people or something like that. Like, yeah, got it. Those are people's lives. But at the same time, um, maybe we just don't need that many IRS agents, you know? So, there's for sure fat that needs to be trimmed from the DoD, and that is one way to do it. And maybe we'll start looking at the officers and enlisted next. So we'll see. All right. Number 3, Pentagon touts $80 million in Doge cuts. The public receipts don't add up. Defense News for March 2025. Numbers for defense cuts listed in the Department of Government Efficiency website don't align with the cuts announced by the Pentagon Press Secretary Sean Parnell on Monday. Items Parnell listed in his video, combined with cuts identified on Doge's website, total about $25 million, in contrast with Parnell's $80 million claim. Funding for many of the cuts listed on Doge's website have already been obligated. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has called on the military departments to redirect about 8% of their budgets toward the Trump administration's priorities. Okay, so if you're not tracking what obligated means when it's funds, is that it's like we've already have it earmarked. Now, there's a difference between committed and obligated and all that kind of stuff. So obligated, and unless there's funding people out there that want to correct me, the way I understand it and the way I have always communicated this whenever we spend money is you have obligated. Wait a minute. Let me make sure. I want to make sure that I'm not feeding you guys bad data, because I know my own opinion. Maybe we'll educate even myself on this. So let's see. We're going to ask Grok, what is the difference between obligated and committed funds with the DoD? All right, let's see what it says. Okay, I'll just read you the whole thing. In context of the Department of Defense budget and financial management, the terms obligated funds and committed funds refer to distinct stages in the process of allocating and spending money. Here's the difference. Committed funds are defined as committed funds represent an initial reservation or earmarking of available funds for a specific purpose, typically before a formal legal obligation is made. This is an administrative action. So, yeah, earmark. I had them flipped. That's what happens when you've been out of the seat for 3 months. That's the second time today, no kidding, that I have been thinking about something and I couldn't remember what the acronym was and what it meant, and I was getting the acronym wrong. So, obligated funds means those that our government, they are funds that our government has legally promised to spend through a binding agreement, such as a signed contract, purchase order, or a grant. This is what the DoD incurs a legal liability to pay for goods and services. So there you go. So that's the difference. So I had them flip. So if there are obligated funds, that means we are essentially under contract, and that is tough to go back on those contracts. Now, the kind of weird thing is they were talking about, like, on the second part of this, where Secretary of Defense called on the military departments to redirect about 8% of their budgets towards the Trump administration. Now, that is the way I see it is that it is a coincidental number, right? Or percentage, 8%. So allegedly, the DoD is getting their budget cut by 5 to 8%. Now, is if say we're getting cut 8% just right off the top, is this an additional 8%? So now it's 16% that we're down, or is that kind of 8% budget cut, is that now included in this 8%? So I don't know, especially because I'm not in the building anymore. But yeah, well, I guess we'll see what happens. Number 4, the Pentagon denies halting cybersecurity operations against Russia, Stars and Stripes, for March 2020. The department has not canceled or delayed cyber operations against Russian targets, DoD officials said via social media on Tuesday. The response follows reports on Monday that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had ordered U.S. Cyber Command to stand down plans to conduct offensive cyber operations against Russia. Hegseth on Monday shared a social media post claiming that Cyber Command has paused, quote, some provocative offensive actions against Russia ahead of negotiations to end the Russian-Ukrainian war. I got nothing to add on that. Air Force news. This is number 5. Air Force announces new unmanned fighter jets will be ready to fly this summer, Fox News, for March 2020. The Air Force's new YFQ-42 Alpha and YFQ-44 Alpha collaborative combat aircraft will be ready to fly this summer, Chief of Staff David Alvin said during his keynote address at the Air and Space Forces Association Warfare Symposium on Monday. The CCAs will represent the first and new generation of fighter capability, will be crucial for establishing air superiority in future conflicts, Alvin said. In a social media post, Alvin wrote, quote, receiving a mission design series designation is a big step in military aviation world. The most badass Air Force in the world is about to get even more lethal. Correct. It looks like, and like I said, I don't preview these beforehand, right? So we're kind of do it live. This next one is from Defense Scoop. It's the exact same thing, basically, about the CCAs. So I'm going to skip that one and go to number 7. Air Force recruitment soars to a 15-year high, officials say. The Epoch Times released on 4 March 2025. Air Force Chief of Staff David Alvin said Monday that Air Force recruiting numbers in the past 3 months were the strongest in 15 years. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth congratulated the Air Force via social media for its accomplishment, adding, quote, Americans are excited to serve their country again. Alvin did not disclose exact figures, but stated that all recruiting metrics look good, even as the Air Force increased its recruitment goal by 20% in FY25. So prior to that, they had moved the goalpost and the recruitment goals had actually gone down. Now they've done an increase of 20%, which is a massive margin for 2025 goals. And I guess right now, I haven't seen the numbers, but according to this, we are on track to meet and exceed that. So it'll be interesting to see. I know that there's a lot of recruiters out there that are doing really good work, and Vegas in particular being the highest density for Air Force. Like, it's the number one spot in the Air Force to join. They just can't get enough recruits. And we have Sergeant Ransom coming on to do a live on the 19th of March, I believe is what it is, on YouTube to answer all your questions. So, and I know she is busy. Number 8, Air Force Chief of Staff says aging fleet not sustainable ahead of budget cuts. The Gazette for March 2020 released. The Air Force's fleet is older and more frail, placing the United States more at risk, Chief of Staff David Alvin warned during his keynote address at the AFA Warfare Symposium in Aurora, Colorado this week. Quote, "You don't know this on the front lines because of the miracles that are going on from our maintainers and those who are sustaining, making it look easy." End quote. He said. Alvin said, while at the Air Force's plans to modernize the force for near-peer competition are currently on hold, he expects they'll be approved once the Senate confirms Air Force Secretary and Air Secretary. 100 freaking percent. Our maintainers are doing miracles every single day to get some of these aircraft up in the air. And I don't mean just because older aircraft. I'm talking about our new F-35s, F-22s, KC-46 Alphas, like new C-130s, MC-130s, the new H-860 Whiskies. Like, yes, they are newer aircraft, but that does not mean that there aren't thousands of little miracles that happen every single day to get these things up in the air in training, and not just training, but doing operations. And that's not, of course, gotta include it. That's not limited to just maintainers, right? But that is the large proponent of the folks that are doing great work. You still need POL to provide fuel. You still need airfield maintenance to make sure the airfield's good to go. You still need air traffic controllers to make sure that they're deconflicted and flying safely. Like, all these things tie in together to make sure that there are safe operations on the airfield. But shout out to the maintainers, man. Monster drinking, Zen living mofos. All right. Number 8. Wait a minute. I just read that one, didn't I? Yep, I just read that one. Okay, number 9. No more viable option than NGAD, or Next Generation Air Dominance. Air Force says. Let me read that again because I shouldn't have said that. No more viable option than NGAD, Air Force says, as decision rests in new hands. Defense One released on 4 March 2025. The Next Generation Air Dominance program is the most viable option to secure air superiority in the future conflict, said Major General Joseph Kunkel, the director of Air Force Design. I'm tripping up my words. Get done. Major General Joseph Kunkel, the director of Air Force Design, Integration, and Wargaming at the AFA Warfare Symposium on Tuesday. Lieutenant General Dale White, military deputy to the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, said the service is considering all its options. Quote, "I don't think the Air Force is sticking its head in the sand and saying there's only one way," White said. "We're being very open-minded about what different opportunities there are or different capabilities we might explore." The Air Force would have been about 3 times. Oh, wait a minute. The Air Force paused the program last summer due to the concerns over its projected unit cost, which would have been about 3 times the cost of the F-35 strike fighter. A new Air Force Secretary and Undersecretary are expected to make a decision once confirmed by the Senate. Okay, let's try this out. How much does a U.S. F-35 cost? All right, unit cost per aircraft. So you have the different variants, right? So an Air Force one is $82.5 million each. F-35 Bravo, which is a Marine Corps one that has the VTOL, is $109 million each. And then the F-35C, which is Navy based, is $102.1 million. Historical context. The first F-35 in 2007 cost $220 million. But as you start buying more, obviously it goes down and all that kind of stuff. The total, my God, this is a rabbit hole. Total program cost, including development and sustainment. If you're looking at the broader picture, the F-35 program's lifetime cost, covering development, procurement, and sustainment through 2088, which is what it's programmed to be, and retire in 2088, it is estimated to be over $2 trillion, according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office in 2024. This includes acquisitions, which is 442 billion developed and buying, and that's 2,500 jets. Sustainment is 1.58 trillion, which is maintenance, operations, upgrades over decades. That's probably new buildings and all that kind of stuff as well. So that's big boy numbers right there. Yeah. Okay, cool. And it's supposed to, and the NGAD is supposed to be 3 times that amount. Yikes. All right, number 10. Air superiority is still the key to winning. Achieving it is getting harder. Air Force or Air and Space Forces released on 4 March. The joint force still needs air superiority to win any future conflict. Air Force leaders said at the AFA Warfare Symposium on Tuesday, quote, "Fiscal constraints do not change what it takes to win," said Major General Joseph Kunkel, the director of Force Design, Integration, and Wargaming, during a panel. Quote, "We know what it takes to win. It takes air superiority, and if America wants to make those investments to win, we'll do so." General Kenneth Vilsbach, commander of Air Combat Command, said air superiority is a foundational enabler for military operations, but can't be viewed in isolation from space superiority. Completely agree. They go hand in hand. Kunkel said the Air Force has asked hard questions about air superiority following the pause of the Next Generation Air Dominance program, adding there was no more viable option than NCAD to achieve air superiority in this highly contested environment. Agree. Air Force and Space Force, they overlap. They provide mutual support to each other. Fighters cannot do what they do on the high end fight at that forward edge without space. That goes for naval ships as well. Like, they can't do that stuff without space. So that's just the reality of it. Number 11. U.S. Air Force's Special Operations Autonomy push looking toward air-launched swarms, Aviation Week, 28 February 2025. Air Force Special Operations Command is looking to embrace autonomous drones through its Adaptive Airborne Enterprise effort and aims to launch drone swarms from its specialized C-130 aircraft. AFSOC has previously demonstrated air launch of small drones from MQ-9 Reapers, which are limited in their carrying capacity. AFSOC Commander Lieutenant General Michael Conley said MC-130 combat talent aircraft could launch dozens of palletized drones to conduct surveillance, electronic warfare, and other missions. Adding on to that, you guys start talking about combat control and special reconnaissance doing recce at the forward edge, right? That's, if you don't think that those aren't going to be players in that involved, and that the capability to fly said aircraft or said drones aren't going to be a capability that the homies on the ground have, you are mistaken. So when you guys want to start talking about, hey, what does SR or special reconnaissance actually do? Hey, does combat control do any kind of recce? There you go. Like, that is an aspect of it. Number 12, Hill Air Force Base prepares to scale back childcare services amid mass federal firings, resignations. Military.com, released on 4 March 2025. Defense Department employees and Gold Star spouses at Hill Air Force Base, Utah, could lose access to child care services this week, according to an internal communication obtained by Military.com. Effects from drawdowns by the Office of Personnel Management may result in rapid reduction of Child Development Center operations, according to the message. Kendall Johnson, a spokesperson for the base, said it's unclear whether the base will have to close any of its CDCs, but families should prepare for a possibility of having to find alternate childcare on short notice. Installation leadership is working with higher headquarters on options, as well as working with potentially affected families to provide contracts and resources should they have to find alternate childcare, Johnson said. Yeah, like I said, it's all part of the kind of fallout and the real world application of some of these. And like I said, it's people's lives. So, um, but again, there's a lot of fat that we need to trim. So I just think that we need to be very targeted, very intentional with the layoffs that we're doing. Number 13, Air Force Academy's Muslim cadets denied accommodation during Ramadan. This is an allegation, apparently, from the Gazette, 3 March 2025. Muslim cadets at the Air Force Academy have been denied religious accommodation to celebrate Ramadan during recognition, which involves 3 days of intense physical training, according to the cadets and a Muslim chaplain at the academy. The chaplain on base said a request made before the winter break to exempt cadets from rigorous physical training was denied. Academy officials said the request was denied because the service likely couldn't accommodate such a request in a deployed environment. Former Air Force Judge Advocate Davis Utes said religious accommodation requests should receive individual reviews as blanket denials can violate the Religious Freedom Act. Army Chaplain Colonel Khalid Shabazz said service members participating in Ramadan should ask commanders for alternate physical training times and should make up days when they can't fast due to intense field training. Okay. JAG, Air Force JAG, Judge Advocate Davis Utes. Did you feel the same when, and I'm curious because I don't know, did you also feel the same when it came to the illegal COVID vaccines that the Air Force and DoD gave everybody? Because there were a whole lot of religious accommodations that were being processed and just getting blanket denied, like blanket denied. Were you in support of that? Like, I'm curious. I don't remember seeing very many judge advocates out there saying, hey, we need to scrutinize these one at a time at an individual basis and individual review. I don't remember saying that. I'm not saying there wasn't any because that would be really ignorant of me, but I just don't remember saying it. And as some of these top JAGs, right, the TJAGs that I got educated on, that's actually a no kidding term because it's top JAG. I sure didn't see that person going out there going, hey, maybe we need to review these religious exemptions for vaccines on an individual basis. Now, maybe it did happen and I just don't know about it, but I don't remember seeing anybody about it. Now, on the other side of this, they are likely like being for real about, hey, you wouldn't get this kind of stuff in a deployed environment, or you may not get this kind of stuff in a treatment in a deployed environment. That's 100% correct because we can't control what the deployed environment is going to look like. Also, I get that this is a training environment, but at the same time, like this is probably all the fasting and everything like that. This is probably for their own health benefit too, right? They are not the only religion out there that does fasting and stuff like that. So, this is not, I get it that the Muslim cadets are upset about this, and maybe they have every right to be. Maybe I don't know because I'm not there. I don't know all the intricate details about it. But at the same time, like, man, maybe we're also kind of looking out for you because maybe we don't need you fasting and doing all this physical activity because I'm not sure what recognition is or what it involves and how physical it actually is. But like, you're going to need to eat. You're going to need to do things during this, and maybe you do your fasting and Ramadan post recognition. So I don't know. That's just thinking out loud. Number 14, Air Force revives Skyraider name for the new light attack aircraft. Defense News, 4 March 2025. Air Force Special Operations Command christened its OA-1K light attack aircraft, the Skyraider 2, in honor of the aircraft that conducted close air support missions during the Vietnam War. Quote, I see a bright future for the OA-1K, AFSOC Commander Lieutenant General Conley said. I think once our operators get their hands on it, it will be something different than what we expect it to be. And that's a good thing when we developed this requirement 5 years ago. Conley said the aircraft has a modular mission pod capable, or Conley said the aircraft has modular mission pod capability with the ability to swap out pods for close air support, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and other missions. Deliveries of the aircraft are expected at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, later this month. So kind of it's kind of funny on that, right? One, it took 5 years, and then I saw something on Instagram from Lowercase Dooms. Let me see if I can find them real quick. And I don't think I'm going to bring it up like on the screen, but they had done a well, man, they've posted a lot. So, oh, okay, here we go. Let me, and it's a meme about from the Doge Department of Government Efficiency website, but it said and it shows a picture of the Skyraider. It says took these MFers at AFSOC 10 years and $2 billion to put a rocket pod on a crop duster and paint it gray. That's, you know what? I'm just going to show it to you guys because it's pretty funny. And I would also say pretty accurate just because, like, look at this thing, right? It really does look like, what's his name from Planes, right? The Disney movie. So, okay, there are your balls. There are your sensor balls right there. This thing's probably armed, or armored, not armed, but armored. But, and then there's your rocket pods there. It looks like they've got, I can't tell because the light's shining in my eyes, but they've got something there. But you got rocket pods. So I don't know. What I can tell you is it's a little bit deceiving here when it says, didn't it say 5 years developed by this requirement 5 years ago? I can tell you right now that we have been looking for a light attack aircraft at least since 2016. And the reason why I say 2016 is because they were going between the AT-6 and the Super Tucano, or maybe the AT-6 is Super Tucano, but the Air Force was trying to figure out, and AFSOC was trying to figure out, like, hey, which one did we go with? So they had bought a couple of them to fly around and that kind of stuff, and some of them were in Afghanistan. So, and that was in 2016 when I was there. 2015, 2016 when I was there. So, I don't know, man. Take from it what you will. But, all right, on to Space Force news. Number 15, Space Force leaders, SDA mission is critical, and despite uncertainty. The Air Force, Space Forces, golly, man. Air and Space Forces released on 4 March 2025. The acting director of the Space Development Agency, which is what SDA stands for, said Tuesday that the agency's work is more important than ever during the AFA Warfare Symposium on Tuesday. Lieutenant General Philip Garrett said the SDA comprises, quote, an incredibly proud workforce, incredibly committed to the mission. They absolutely believe in what they're doing and are really pushing the boundaries. Chief of Space Operations Chance Saltzman said SDA's mission is critical to the Joint All-Domain Command and Control System and President Donald Trump's Golden Dome missile defense system. Quote, they take advantage of the new techniques for doing acquisition. Saltzman said, we want to make sure that taking advantage of these new techniques is serving well and getting us where we need to go. Cool. Number 16. How is the Space Force handling civilian personnel cuts? Air and Space Forces, 4 March 2025. The Space Force is considering how cuts to the Defense Department's civilian workforce will affect the service. Chief of Space Operations, General Chance Saltzman, said Tuesday during the AFA Warfare Symposium. Quote, the orders are pretty clear and we're going to follow those orders, Saltzman said. I am worried about it. Am I worried about it? I am always worried about making sure we have the right workforce to do the missions that we have been given, end quote. Just under a third of the Space Force's Guardians are civilians. Whoa, a third? And a considerable number of civilian employees in the Space Systems Command took the Office of Personnel Management's deferred resignation option, which was the fork in the road, basically saying, hey, I think it was by 6 February, you can either stay and figure out what happens with the government civilian workforce, or you can take the fork in the road and you can opt out and say, yeah, I'm good. I'd like to depart. And they would continue to pay you without any work until September. So, but then you get fired or laid off, and the risk is that your position itself goes away. So the organization may actually lose that capability in that position altogether, which is not great. I knew that the Space Force had a large civilian component to it and contractor component to it, but I did not know that a third of it. That's wild. That's big boy numbers. Number 17, it works. Space Force expands surveillance as a service program after successful pilot. Air and Space Forces released on 4 March 2025. Chief of Space Operations General Chance Saltzman called the Tactical Surveillance, Reconnaissance, and Tracking Program a success during a media roundtable at the AFA Warfare Symposium on Tuesday. Quote, I don't have to test it anymore. It works, Saltzman said. Now they're just making the demand signal in, and we're going to the marketplace, finding the products and delivering it. U.S. Space Forces Central Commander Colonel Christopher Putnam said, TAC SRT provided imagery to monitor security of the joint logistics over the shore pier adjacent to the Gaza Strip last year. I mean, that's a lot of words. Hopefully you kept up with that. That was tough for me to read. Quote, we had daily products and were able to provide those on a not classified basis to everyone that had a concern there, Putnam said. And they were able to see what they needed to see an easily disseminated product. Number 18, Space Acquisition Hub preparing for impact of Trump's workforce cuts. Defense News 4 March 2025. The commander of Space Systems Command said SSC will continue to focus on how it continues to deliver its mission as it navigates cuts to the federal workforce and possibly a year-long continuing resolution. Quote, there is a lot of concern, Lieutenant General Philip Garrett said during a media roundtable at the AFA Warfare Symposium on Tuesday. Quote, as a command and as a commander, we are going to focus on how we can continue to deliver the mission with the human resources that we have. Garrett said a sizable number of civilian workforces. Yeah, so it's essentially the same thing that we just talked about in the last one. Number 19, new promotion system for Space Force sergeants coming this year. Air and Space Forces released on 4 March. The Space Force will introduce a new promotion system for rising sergeants later this fiscal year. Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force, John Bentivega, I'm sorry, dude, I know I'm messing up your name, said during the AFA, and he's a big fan of the show, just so you know, big fan, said during the AFA Warfare Symposium on Tuesday, the system will eliminate caps on the number of specialist fours or spec fours who can promote to sergeant, adding, quote, if they're qualified and ready, they are going to work. Let's make them an E5, especially if they're combat mission ready. Under the new system, limits on the number of eligible candidates for promotion will be eliminated, allowing every E4 who meets promotion criteria to advance. This change empowers commanders who, entrusting them with the added responsibility of identifying and promoting the most qualified guardians to E5 within their units. I'll tell you right now, without details, this sounds pretty awesome, but maybe the details, devils in the details. I don't know. Interesting. All right. Oh man, this is long. Okay. Of interest, number 20, Pentagon losing my voice. Pentagon nominee deflects on Russian invasion of the Ukraine in hearing Defense News for March 2020. The Trump administration nominee for Undersecretary of Defense for Policy declined to answer whether Russia invaded Ukraine during a Senate Armed Services Committee confirmation hearing on Tuesday. Quote, the president and the vice president have been very clear that words matter, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to be commenting on these delicate topics. Elbridge Colby said. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has previously declined to acknowledge Russia's invasion of the Ukraine in February of 2022. The White House nominee for the Deputy Defense Secretary, Stephen Feinberg, also declined to answer whether Russia was responsible for the war. The Trump administration on Monday paused military aid to Ukraine following a contentious meeting between the White House officials and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Friday. Number 21, Representative Kiggins urges DoD to protect veterans amid workforce reductions. WTKR, I guess that sounds like a radio station, for March 2025. Unattributed, that means they don't know who it is. Representative Jen Kiggins, Republican for Virginia, called on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to prevent workforce reductions that could unduly target military veterans. Kiggins, a former Navy helicopter pilot who represents the Hampton Roads area, said reductions or reforms, quote, that risk weakening our defense capabilities, particularly as we face increasingly global threats, are unacceptable. Kiggins called on Hegseth to protect veterans in workforce reductions, provide support for veterans who do lose their jobs, and keep veterans employed for critical national defense missions. Yes and no. The DoD and the military should not be in the business of a jobs program. So, yes, we do need to make sure we take care of our veterans, and if there is the right person, the right veteran, with the right qualifications for a specific job, then it should be a direct hire job. Somebody has 20 plus years of experience in doing something and is good at it, and that commander wants to hire that person, that commander should be allowed to do that. Just saying that blanket statement that any person that served, any kind of veteran, should be able to get a government job is false. I do not agree with that. We are not a jobs program. Number 22, F-35s to get new capabilities with summer software update. Defense News released on 4 March. Lockheed Martin officials said Monday that they hope to roll out Block 4 upgrades to the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter later this summer. Quote, our warfighters are going to see a much higher increase of stability in that software. Once Lockheed deploys Technology Refresh 3 software updates, F-35 Vice President and General Manager Chauncey McIntosh said. McIntosh declined to offer the details, but said, quote, there are some things coming that the warfighter is going to be excited to receive. Hardware and software issues delayed the TR3 rollout in 23 to 24, and an interim version of the TR3 software is currently only approved for training missions. Number 23, space launch executives warn U.S. infrastructure unprepared for coming launch surge. Space News released on 4 March 2025. The nation's launch facilities are unprepared for a projected surge in missions, Blue Origin CEO Dave Limp said during an AFA warfare symposium on Monday. Quote, I don't think that the people realize how many rockets are going to be launching 5 or 8 years from now, Limp said, mirroring the concerns by SpaceX and United Launch Alliance executives. Quote, there's going to be other mega constellations. The government's going to need more. Civil space is going to need more. I envision a world in the not so distant future where there are multiple launches every single day, and I just don't think we're thinking about the infrastructure. We're not planning for that world. John Edwards, vice president of the Falcon launch vehicles for SpaceX, said Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Florida, doesn't allow simultaneous launches by different providers, adding the biggest challenge is going to be the amount of activity and being able to manage that with the current infrastructure. Completely agree. Right now, Vegas is looking to build a space rocket freaking base or whatever, launching facility, space airport, I think is what they were calling it, just south of Las Vegas in Jean and Prim area. So pretty cool. Pretty excited about that. But I do agree, our infrastructure is very lacking. We have neglected it for sure, in many ways. Number 24, museum exhibit controversy reignites Airman Medal of Honor dispute. Defense News for March 2025. A museum honoring Medal of Honor recipients is set to open later this month in Arlington, Texas, but it currently does not plan to host a dedicated exhibit honoring Master Sergeant John Chapman, who was killed while fighting Taliban forces in Afghanistan in March 2002. Museum officials have said Chapman's story will be, quote, included from day one as part of a rotation for over 3,500 Medal of Honor recipients. Quote, we have been involved in an ongoing iterative process of planning exhibits and building a collection of artifacts to support and enrich museum storytelling experience, museum CEO Chris Cassidy said in a statement. Chapman's medal was awarded posthumously. We've already done a video on this. You guys can check out Nate over at Valhalla VFT. There's been a lot of coverage of this. You got Zablinski, who was on this operation, who is also a Medal of Honor recipient, that was on the team that left John Chapman out there on the mountain. Again, he got a Medal of Honor. He is also a board member at the Medal of Honor Museum, and guess what? He also has an exhibit, a dedicated exhibit at the Medal of Honor Museum, whereas John Chapman just has a mention. So I don't know. If it were me and I was Zablinski and I was living, there is no way in hell I would have my own exhibit unless John Chapman also had an exhibit. You should be humble enough and be pushing somebody who died when you're on the same mission, and already the controversy that is involved in that. And again, I've always kind of stuck up for the SEALs in the way that, unpopular opinion within my own community, like I have stuck up for them, and I've caught heat for that. But man, as you're a board member and you find this out, even if you weren't involved in the planning of it, and you find this out, you've got to stand your ground and go, absolutely not. You put John Chapman in there, you take me not out of it, but you either do both of us because we're on the same mission, or you just put him up there. That's just the reality of it. All right, a couple more. Opinion. Number 25, opinion. New thinking needed to safeguard our spectrum. Breaking news, or breaking defense for March 2025. The 5G wireless industry should embrace a spectrum sharing agreement with the Defense Department and Federal Communications Commission, writes retired Brigadier General Rob Lyman, previous Director of Command and Control Communications Cyber Systems, Deputy Director of the Space Force Operations for U.S. Transportation Command. Quote, Congress doesn't need to eject the military from the low 3 gigahertz band to free spectrum for private use, Lyman writes. Proven spectrum sharing models such as the Citizens Broadband Radio Service demonstrate that the military can retain priority access to key spectrum while safely and securely opening the band to factories, warehouses, rural internet providers, schools, airports, and other innovative users. He calls on Congress and the FCC to overcome bureaucratic inertia and build on models for shared spectrum. All right, last one. 26. Opinion. Piercing the veil of military legal neutrality. Real clear defense for March 2025. I don't know if you guys can hear those F-16s ripping it over my house. It's awesome. Judge advocates have previously advanced partisan politics agendas, such as John Yo's torture memo, notes Army Major Trent Kubaski, Chief of National Security Law with 8th Army in Seoul, Korea. Yo's memo and the JAG Corps' response became ground zero for a partisan debate. Kubasaki, as that Army Major Trent writes, quote, military legal advice became part of the national discourse on torture, executive power, and the rule of law. The very act of providing legal guidance had placed them on one side of the partisan battle. Is it any wonder that the new administration could conceive to the service JAGs as a partisan political threat. He argues. He concludes, we cannot pretend that military lawyers are simply passive legal actors. We shape and are shaped by policies we devise on. And the sooner we acknowledge this uncomfortable reality, the better we can address the ethical and professional challenges that lie ahead, end quote. Key word in here, we shape and are shaped by policies we advise on. You advise. The legal community advises. You don't make decisions, just like the financial community does not make decisions. Commanders make decisions. They are granted the authorities to make the decisions. The medical community, the senior enlisted leader, the JAGs, the finance, you advise the commander. The commander can still make the decision. So there you go. Deal with that. All right, we're out here. ONESREADY.com. Get yourself some merch. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share it. We already know that we're shadow banned, right? We already know that. We've actually got confirmation from that from YouTube that they are throttling our stuff. So share this with as many people as you can. Make sure that you are subscribed and hit that thumbs up. All right, we're out here. Later.